Joining us now to better understand what comes next in the presidential race is Erin Perrine, the Director of Press Communications for the 2020 Trump campaign. So, Erin, we just showed Joe Biden. He's starting to make some appearances. He at least came out today, gave a little bit of a speech, took some questions, although albeit from an approved list of reporters, it looked like. Do you think that this is the beginning of Joe Biden starting to come out of his basement?
Joe Biden was clearly worried about what his handlers were thinking throughout that as he looked to the approved list of reporters he could take questions from. And at the end saying, oh, they're going to be so mad at me if I keep going. Listen, Joe Biden should come out. He should regularly engage with the media and answer questions and have to be put to the test of an actual conversation with the American people, not only about what his policies would be or could be, but on his 40 years of failure in D.C. And today you saw a very softball media question round from reporters there in Delaware, including questions that should have been pushing back on lies. Joe Biden told multiple lies standing there today with no pushback from reporters. And so if he actually got on the trail and engaged with reporters who weren't approved by his handlers, you might hear him be pushed back on about the fact that he claimed he raised alarms in January. That's a fact-checked lie, because in January he put out an op-ed and then he went on to say that he called the president stopping flights from China hysterical xenophobia. That's not stepping up to try and meet the challenge of the coronavirus. Joe Biden should engage. He should be out. I mean, we're certainly ready to get out there and have a conversation with him about the real facts of his 40 years of failure.
And I was listening to that press conference, too. I didn't hear anything about the Logan Act brought up. Of course, that's the guy who first, I mean, from what we know, he's the guy who first brought up the Logan Act that was eventually tried to be used against General Michael Flynn in that now controversial court case. So no questions about that, kind of making the point to what you're saying about a lack of hard questions. But this does come at a time, too, where a lot of people are now looking ahead to debates. A lot of conservatives saying that'll be the time where we won't only draw the contrast between Joe Biden and President Trump, but we'll start to see a little bit of the mental fitness be put to the test a little bit. It's questions that have been lingering even before Joe Biden got the nomination. It was existent in the primaries before, too. So when it comes to the debates, is there any effort to push those up a little bit, acknowledging the fact that early voting does start in about 2 months?
We have asked Joe Biden's campaign to allow for more debates, for more conversations between President Trump and former Vice President Biden, because there are plenty of questions to be asked and actually answered by the former vice president. We know he is not up to the test to stand on the debate stage with President Trump. We all remember, if you think back to 2016, what do people remember the debates? They remember President Trump saying, you be locked up to Hillary Clinton. And that was it, because he is a fighter and he is good on his toes and he is quick. And now he's got a record to run on and a bigger base of knowledge when it comes to the administration, to what he has done on that record. He will absolutely obliterate Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who thinks he's running for Senate in 1918. He has no idea what's going on. It'll be the best in broadcast television when Joe Biden steps up to try and debate President Trump.
And acknowledging all of those points, and they're all good ones, do you fear that the Biden campaign will try to push off debates in some degree, maybe altogether, citing coronavirus concerns?
You know, they have no case to make when it comes to coronavirus concerns, because after we began to socially distance and we began taking steps to close the economy and artificially interrupt it for the coronavirus, he did a debate against Senator Sanders. So he's got no leg to stand on when it comes to a conversation about whether or not we should have those. I wouldn't put anything past the Biden team, especially if they can't handpick the reporters or handpick the questions that they're going to get asked. But listen, we're ready. And when it comes to Joe Biden, we've got the facts. We know his record. President Trump does as well. So he needs to stand up and defend it and actually have a conversation about why he wants to raise taxes on Americans, why he supports the Green New Deal, why he's beholden to the radical left. Those are conversations he needs to have with the American people and not just his hand-picked friends in the media.
Yeah, and I think that's something, too, where the American people are starting to see that he is making an overt effort to stay out of the public eye. It's something that's become very obvious over the past couple of weeks, and I think doing away with debates would be a little bit too far, even for the average American. But before I let you go, too, we've seen a couple court cases this week. In fact, today I would say was the first one that was necessarily favorable to the conservative majority, a 5-4 decision regarding religious funding to religious schools, private schools in Montana. But over the past couple of days, we've seen some decisions decisions that are a little bit surprising for many conservatives, acknowledging the fact that they should have a 5-4 majority. Chief Justice John Roberts has been a little bit of a wild card on that effort. Does that only really build on the president's argument of why he should be reelected? Because we are assuming that there is going to be a Supreme Court vacancy in the near future, and if not, then perhaps Democrats will get a chance to even the majority once again. Is that a big case for the GOP going into November?
Alex, you're exactly right on this. When it comes to what we've seen in the Supreme Court in the last 2 days, it has made the further case for why we need 4 more years of President Trump. In one case, you saw that abortion in this country will continue to be expanded upon if we don't bring another conservative justice to the bench, a picked one by President Trump. And you saw today in a case that should have been a 9-0 decision about religious persecution being constitutionally allowed in a state, that should have been a decision that was easy for them to make, but it was still split 5-4. So those are 2 cases and 2 examples of why we need 4 more years of President Trump, who has said he'll put out his list again of potential people he would put up for the Supreme Court. And you heard Joe Biden today say he wasn't going to do that. Why? Because we know who Joe Biden would pick. It would be an extreme radical left socialist who would not protect the Constitution, who would not defend liberty, who would not defend America, and who would think that they could be a legislator from the bench. President Trump believes in constitutionalism. He believes in the greatness of this nation, and you've seen that reflected in his pick. The Supreme Court will be a large part of the conversation we have with the American people, and today's and yesterday's rulings are clear examples why we need President Trump again.
And Chief Justice John Roberts, when we're talking about that Louisiana abortion case, it's very interesting because he essentially sided with the same law, but on the other side of that argument when it came to a Texas law. I mean, on the face, it was basically the same exact circumstance, and then you look at what's happening in Louisiana, and he takes the complete opposite position. I think it's puzzling for a lot of people, not only conservatives, who are wondering exactly where this rationale is coming from. So I think you're right to say that the Supreme Court will be on the ticket almost as well as with President Trump and Joe Biden. But Erin Perrine, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for coming on tonight.